Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Football Podcast. It is me, Joe Pisapia, and today we're going to take a look at the rookie class of 2024 and what they may or may not do in 2025. To help us go through it, the Undertaker himself, Andrew Erickson, and our newest contributor here to Fantasy Pros, straight from the Athletics' own Jake Ciely. Jake Ciely, good to see you, my friend. Speaking of Royal Rumbles, got any predictions? We just mentioned the Undertaker there a little bit. Obviously, he's not in the game anymore. Thank God. I don't need more Undertaker comebacks. But since we're talking about rookies and things like that, is there a prediction or maybe a new person showing up at the Rumble you want to predict before Saturday?
Oh, we're going to do the, what's his face? Now, I just did the brain one, the one that keeps wanting
Joe
to wrestle
Hendry?
John Cena. Yes,
Oh.
Hendry feels like the obvious surprise.
It
But
does.
they're already breaking news. They're like signing people 3 days before the Royal Rumble. And they're like, by the way, Jordan Grace,
Jordan
however you say
Grace
her
is
last
going to be
name.
there. Yep.
Yeah. So like we have that. I think the biggest one is just getting, I don't know. Do we get Asuka back?
I think we do. I think it's going to be late in there. Andrew Erickson's completely confused. I don't know if he follows anymore what we're talking about. But Andrew Erickson, it's rookie time. You are here while Debro is in Senior Bowl stuff. What's going on there? Debro didn't have enough money to buy you a ticket?
No, I mean, there's boots on the ground. I know Mayer's there, Debro is there. Someone else has got to be doing the Super Bowl previews, the free agency stuff.
True.
So that's where I'm in charge. So if you need fancy questions answered in the Discord, I'm going to get back to you. So
That's right. I like that terrible Derek Brown. I like that guy. But great stuff's coming out of Mobile pretty soon, too, for Senior Bowl this weekend. So a lot of fun things going on here at Fantasy Pros. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, of course, and, of course, the podcast, wherever you get your pods. Very excited that Jake is here with us all season long. Again, does amazing work at The Athletic. Jake, what's going on there right now at The Athletic, too, as you guys are approaching Super Bowl and starting to turn the page to the 2025 draft and fantasy football season?
Wow, you said Super Bowl, which it brings up the bane of my existence next week is the Super Bowl commercial rankings, because I rank everything, and I got saddled with that early in my career at The Athletic. So yes, I have to do that. Where everybody else gets to sit with their friends and watch the Super Bowl, I'm like, hold on, I'll be right back as I go sit at my computer for the commercial break. On the good side of things, I just finished my 3-piece, the look back at the projections, where the big misses, the big hits were, and why. Like, what do we learn going forward?
Well, my dad used to love the commercials. We used to do a pool. Everybody would get something. Somebody would get beer. Somebody would get, snack foods, technology, and you had to keep track. And we had like a pool running, and then there was money in the pool or a prize at the pool. So if you're at your Super Bowl party and you have some people who aren't into football as much, maybe you can help out Jake Ciely with the commercials. The little commercial pool keeps everybody engaged. You can take the halftime off, though. That you're allowed. All right, let's get to the other rules here of the game, which is the rookies and how they did. And last year was a pretty solid season for the rookies. A few guys did outperform expectations. I want to start with the running backs here, and I want to start with Bucky Irving, who is currently right now RB8 in the 2025 half PPR rankings over on Fantasy Pros. You can find them at fantasypros.com/ranks. You can check them out there. And as RB8, it seems like for his size, Jake, a running back that maybe we're looking at 200 attempts again, which is where he was last year, right? 208. But do you think he is still going to have somebody else in that backfield working with him? And if so, does that potentially hinder him from a top 10 finish in 2025?
I don't know if it hinders him. I do think there will be somebody involved, just because that's also the landscape of the NFL. But yeah, you bring up the size. It's interesting, as somebody who was super high on him coming out of college and thought he was a threat. I compared him to Michael Carter, but like what we wanted Michael Carter to be. And the biggest thing with Michael Carter was also, we don't want him touching the ball 20 times a game. But I say that, and the Buccaneers said we do at the end of the season, because they were done with Rashad White, healthy Rashad White, and that's the playoffs in the line. Bucky Irving was 20 touches. Does that work out to an entire season? I don't know. So where I'll make the fantasy comparison, if you don't want to think like stylistically who this running back is, I like to always give like a fantasy production when I do rookies. Like, so for this year, I'll say this is the fantasy production you could expect. I think he's James Cook, and the fact that 1,000, 1,100, maybe 1,200 in the best season, good in the passing game. The touchdowns will be the volatility, but that's what we should expect as a fringe RB1. So RB8 might be priced a little bit high, and that's somebody who loved Bucky Irving this year. I'd be more comfortable a few spots behind him for the guaranteed workload, but I think it's fair. I just don't see where there's much ceiling to get up from RB8.
Well, Erickson, he did have 8 touchdowns last year, and on top of it, he did work in the passing game too. So a lot of people have that misconception. Oh, well, Bucky Irving wasn't really good in the passing game. Not necessarily true. He saw 52 targets, got 47 for 392. So do you think maybe there's even room to grow for Bucky Irving in 2025 based on what you saw in the sample size of rookie? Because look, let's face it, in the first month of the season too, things were a little slow there for him.
Well, he was still getting adapted to the NFL climate. Again, he was a rookie, and Rachaad White was still the entrenched starter. But after 2 months of Rachaad White running into his offensive lineman, they'd seen enough. And they're like, all right, we got to get Bucky Irving involved. And I mean, he checked off every box. And it wasn't just the scheme that Liam Cohen put in. It was the fact that Bucky was breaking tackles like a madman, right? The part of what worked with Bucky Irving was, let's get this guy in space and let him work. And that's why he was so effective and better than Rachaad White. And to give credit just Cohen in this offense overall, I mean, Rachaad White hit 4 yards per carry. Like, that is absolute wizardry from Liam Cohen and this offensive line from the Buccaneers that Rachaad White got to 4 yards per carry. Obviously, Bucky Irving was better, but I think that Jake is accurate when you're talking about, no, they're probably not going to load him up with 20, 25 touches per game, but that means you're going to have this guy for the whole season. And when we're talking about the concerns about an undersized running back entering year 2, well, didn't we talk about this with Kyron Williams? That didn't really matter. Didn't we talk about this with Devon Achane? It didn't really matter. Like, these guys were just good, and they found ways because they're good. And even Achane last year, again, his efficiency fell off a cliff, but he made up for it in the passing game. And to your point, he caught passes last year. He caught a ton of passes at Oregon, so I'm not concerned that he can't carve out a role here. Again, we'll see what Tampa Bay does at offensive coordinator after they lost Cohen to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But second-year running backs tend to be good investments. Bucky Irving was one of the ones that really hit in a very weak running back class last year. And he was really the one guy that really hit in a big way. So I think that he's a good buy. I like the back-end RB1 price. I would say RB8 is probably at the high end of that, where RB10, RB11 is probably a little bit more where I would be drafting and ranking him.
You want to give me your best Liam Cohen Duval before we go?
Oh, my gosh.
Not awkward at all.
Not awkward at all. He just like a pan out. He's like,
Duval? They need to play that on the Jumbotron before every game. That's what I would be doing.
You know what clinched watching that? Like, that's how awkward it felt.
Oh, goodness. It's funny. When it releases, it's actually the same sound it makes. Let's get to Tyrone Tracy, currently RB22 in the consensus ranks. He finished as RB28, so looking at him maybe moving up in the world a little bit. A good season from Tyrone Tracy. The question is what the quarterback situation is going to be. Certainly there's going to be a lot of pressure on this regime. So looking at what you saw in Tyrone Tracy last year, Andrew Erickson, I can understand a bit of a bump, which is what he's getting right here. But is it a fair price considering what the Giants offense might look like again, and considering the division they're playing in is going to be one where probably they're looking down at the Giants?
I'm definitely biased here because I liked Tracy a lot as a prospect, and he was someone that came into the NFL with not a lot of experience at running back. Like, he shifted over to running back after playing wide receiver at the college level for the majority of his time spent at school. And I mean, the fact that he kind of flashed as a rookie with not a lot of experience, I think that goes to what kind of running back he is and what he's capable of doing. So yeah, I think that he will be the starter opening day for the New York Giants. I can't imagine that Joe Schoen and these guys are going to want to draft a running back high after they went to the expense of not signing Saquon Barkley and going through all that. So they need Tracy to like hit in a big way. It's like, hey, we found this 5th round pick and he was nasty. So again, I don't expect them to necessarily draft a running back with high draft capital in the draft. And Devin Singletary is still under contract. So they're comfortable with Devin Singletary as the RB2, but we've already seen Tracy can offer more. So I think back-end RB2 is appropriate for, hey, this is a starting running back. He's young, he's explosive, he can catch passes, but he plays on an offense that is probably going to be bad in 2025. Now, so I think that back-end RB2 kind of makes the most sense for him. Not someone that I think that, you need to draft time with Tracy. Depends on, I think, where the market like settles on him, but back-end RB2 sounds about right.
Ciely, RB22, too high, too low, or just about right?
It's the just about right porridge. Because I'm looking at who's in front of him.
Tell me.
Yeah, it's like the guys that are in front of him, the only one I could see a toss-up is depending on what the Chiefs do with Pacheco. Is that going to be a timeshare as Kareem Hunt continues to outperform him, or is this injury-related? But that might be the only person in front of him right now where I'm like, you know what? Maybe I go the other way. Behind him, depending on where Aaron Jones lands, depending on where J.K. Dobbins lands, I could see him even falling back a few spots. The comparison here that I'll give everybody is kind of like Antonio Gibson. And we saw even on a bad Washington offense that 1 year of Antonio Gibson, you could get top 15 production. But the biggest thing that Andrew said was the concern of why he was actually one of my misses in the running back projections, because I expected Brian Dable to not go away from Devin Singletary because they signed him and he had that familiarity from the Bills. As Andrew brought up, they don't even save any money. They can't get rid of him. He's 6.25. It's 6 dead. Like, they saved $250,000 to get rid of him. They're not going to do that. So he's still going to be around. And the fact that, okay, Tracy at 15 to 18 touches on the Dolphins, sign me up. 49ers, sign me up. On the Giants, even if they got Cam Ward, I don't really care. Like, I can't see him moving up from fringe RB2, as Andrew said. So we're in lockstep again.
All right, 2 guys that I was actually high on because they were cheap, but really didn't get much of an opportunity in 2024. Jaylen Wright had a nice preseason. Trey Benson got a lot of glowing reviews from big-time guys like LaDainian Tomlinson. He thought he was the best running back in that draft last year. So 2025, do you see anything changing for either of those 2 guys? Jake, are you going to be looking at year 2 on Benson or Jaylen Wright potentially based on what the landscape might be for them this season?
I think Benson, if he slides back in the ranks because what happened last year, that he got hurt. Also, James Conner stayed mostly healthy. That I will take that chance because it's the backup opportunity. We want the backup opportunity, but James Conner's going to get hurt at some point. So I know they gave him the contract and he'll be back, but I look for that opportunity. But Wright, I think, is intriguing, but it's going to come down to what happens with the Dolphins this year, because the Wright taking over as that second piece is cool. It's exciting, but he's not so much Mostert. He's actually a little bit more Achane. So it's kind of interesting to see what they'll do with that mixture. But we need the Dolphins offense to bounce back. Like, the NFL adjusted to the Dolphins and said, all right, we're going to keep everything in front of us. If they get rid of Tyreek Hill and they overhaul this offense to a degree, I just don't know that you're going to get that double production that we saw from 2 years ago with Wright. So of the 2, I'd rather go back in on Benson just because of the upside if something were to happen, which likely will, to James Conner at some point.
Well, I think that's the point, right, Erickson? Because if you're talking about James Conner, it's like, oh, another healthy season for James Conner. Again, it feels like we've said that for a few seasons now, and I don't know how many we have left in the deck to play.
Yeah, James Conner is coming off one of his biggest workloads of his NFL career, and he's going to be 30 in May. So I think honestly, we're getting a discount on Benson because he also got hurt at the end of the season. If Benson had had the opportunity that Michael Carter got with the Cardinals over the last couple of weeks, we would be talking about Trey Benson. Oh man, like, this is the 0 RB guy you need to draft is Trey Benson. That all the YouTube algorithms would have been like, this running back you have to draft would be Trey Benson in the thumbnail. So I liked Benson. He was my RB1 in this class coming into last year, but like you said, he never got the opportunity to really show out because James Conner stayed healthy the entire year. I would not anticipate that happening again. So I like Benson. And when it comes to Wright, I think Wright might run into the issue where his rookie year was really up and down. Like, he peaked in that Patriots game where he looked really good, and then he was on the bench behind guys like Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert as the season kind of trickled down later into the November and December months. So that was a big concern because you want rookies to ascend as the season progresses, not descend like Jaylen Wright. He kind of went backwards, and it seemed like he had lost some trust with the coaching staff. McDaniel wasn't using him. He was using the veterans instead in these must-win games. It didn't seem like they trusted Jaylen Wright. And the other issue with Wright is Greer, the Dolphins GM, loves drafting running backs. I mean, he drafted Achane. He drafted Wright the next year. So in a stacked running back class, I don't think Wright even necessarily has the pathway where he might have more competition. And that was the biggest knock on him coming out to me, was never took over a backfield completely. Never was a bell cow. And what did he do his rookie year? He never was able to assert himself even as the number 2 behind guys like Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. So those are my concerns. So again, we are continuing to co-sign here with our guest, Jake Ciely, but I'm going to go with Trey Benson as well.
All right, there's a few other guys, too, in this class from last year that either didn't get a full look or maybe might not be quite ready to pop. But there's got to be a couple that are hiding here in the bargain basement bin. I know Marshawn Lloyd was a guy that did play last year. That was a guy Debro was high on. Unfortunately, Jonathan Brooks, again, the injuries, look like they're going to take him out here once again for the 2025 season. So, Erickson, is there somebody that you look at this 2024 class who didn't get an opportunity, who might be somebody that you're speculating on in 2025?
I'm going to go back to the Blake Cornwell for the Los Angeles Rams. I think that we could see a potential shift when it comes to Kyren Williams as that bell cow back. Now, that hasn't been the case since he's been healthy.
You horrible, horrible hypocrite. You
Why
just sat on the because you just said, like, we were talking about how, little running backs, and they said they can't do it 2 years in a row, like Kyron Williams.
Well,
and now you want to take the job away from Kyron Williams.
Okay.
How dare you, sir? How dare you, good sir?
Okay, well, this is over 2 years now. Now we're entering year 3. Can he continue to do it?
I was going to get my dueling glove out here for a second. It's right over here.
My argument is really talking about when it comes to Sean McVay. He said in his post-season presser, this is from the Coach Speak Index, so he wants the 2025 offense to be more versatile. And he even talked about Liam Cohen in the Buccaneers offense, where Buccaneers offense, yes, eventually turned it over to Bucky Irving, but for a lot of the year, they were using 2 different running backs. So I think that we might see a bit of a change here with Sean McVay, with this running style, with Kyron Williams. Kyron Williams was second in the NFL in touches last year. He had nearly 400 touches.
Wow.
Having those many, the last season, entering the 2024 year, the top 3 guys in touches were Christian McCaffrey, Rachaad White, Travis Etienne. Bust. 3 busts. So, again, I don't think that it's a good strategy to chase the guy that had the most touches the year before when there's a rookie or a younger running back that they were excited about using. Blake Corum obviously got hurt again at the end of the year too, so he didn't get an opportunity similar to a Trey Benson. But I think that Kyron, the fumbles, that was a big thing at the end of the year. Like, he was not holding onto the ball in some of these key games. So I think that Blake Corum, again, RB40, RB34, kind of in that range, I think that he might have a bigger role than most people anticipate. And when you look at him compared to someone like a Najee Harris, a lot of people knock on Najee Harris, like he's not a good running back. Almost all the advanced metrics when it comes to rushing, Najee Harris and Kyron Williams are almost identical. Yards per carry, rushing yards over expectation, total rushing EPA. The only thing that Kyron Williams had more than Najee Harris was fumbles, ironically enough. So
and a quarterback to move the chains. That helps sometimes as well. I think Corum's in the wrong locker room in LA. He should just wait and just switch over to the Chargers and go hang out with Harbaugh again. I think that would really be where I'd like to see him. Right town, wrong team. Ciely, is there a guy for you that stands out maybe from last year's rookie class that you think in 2025 might be somebody worth picking up late?
So it's funny that I would have said Marshawn Lloyd if you were going to bring him up already. I thought actually go back to James Conner. I thought he could be the best or even the worst of James Conner to give you kind of an idea of who he is. But even the worst of James Conner is still pretty good. It really comes down to health behind Josh Jacobs. But as happened to Lloyd, he got hurt anyway. So if I wasn't going to go Lloyd, I'll go for one of the others. I only had 4 running backs in my tier 1 last year. We've mentioned them all, Benson, Brooks, and Lloyd. The other one was Braelon Allen, and I just thought, unfortunately, also one of my favorite underrated running backs on Isaiah Davis. They all end up in the same team with Breece Hall, which is just frustrating, but that's why I have some interest in Braelon Allen just above his cost right now. I put him in more of the RB30s as somebody who could timeshare with the new regime, as we saw happen to Breece Hall at the end of the year. Maybe they come in and they use Breece Hall like a bell cow. Cool. Yay, we're excited for that. But there's still the equitable opportunity that they come in and they want a timeshare and they want to use Breece Hall more as in a lean to the passing game, and they use Braelon Allen as more of the lead running back, and they make that switch. It could happen. We've seen crazier things. And then if anything were to happen to Breece Hall, I think Braelon Allen, as we saw briefly, does carry top 15 upside. So I think that Braelon Allen, because of the fear of a full committee and then not knowing what the coaching staff will do, will probably keep his price in the 40s. I would go a little bit earlier than that, just on the upside if any of those opportunities happened.
Coming up in 2 weeks, it's not the little itty bitty teeny tiny bowl. It's the Super Bowl. That's right, folks. And you can get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook. I always waited my whole career to say teeny tiny bowl just once. And I got to just now, thanks to DraftKings, the official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 59. And if you're ready to place your first bet, try betting on something simple like a player to score 6. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app, make your pick today, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use that promo code FantasyPros, that's one word, FantasyPros, for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's right, $200 instantly in bonus bets when you bet just $5 only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Let's switch gears, gentlemen, to the wide receivers. Malik Nabers, highly regarded guy going in, coming out of 2024, highly regarded as well, despite the quarterback play again being less than ideal. So right now he is the 7th wide receiver in ECR, but Brian Thomas, the guy that only Andrew Erickson really saw coming. He predicted he would lead. If you go back and watch the YouTube show we just did, going back on our predictions, it was a great time. And Brian Thomas Jr. was the guy he said was going to lead all rookie wide receivers in receiving yards. And by golly, he was right. He is ranked 8th. Malik Nabers is 7th, but not that far behind Ladd McConkey at 15th. So they're all kind of in that wide receiver 1 tier, basically, depending on the depth of your league. So Nabers, Thomas, and McConkey. They finished 7th, 4th, and 13th in total points. Looking at those stats here, who do you prefer at value, Jake Ciely? That's the question I'm going to ask you. Malik at 7, Brian Thomas Jr. at 8, or waiting a little bit longer and getting Ladd McConkey at the 15th?
So, correction being made, because everybody coming from The Athletic watching this are like, Joe, you're out of your damn mind, because Andrew might have been, but Jake, I don't know, like, can I turn this? Do you see the signed football from Brian Thomas Jr. sitting right behind me of somebody who from day one was on Brian Thomas, who said that he deserved to be in tier 1 with Malik Nabers and Marvin Harrison, who had...
Well, now you got to move your camera all the way back.
Yeah, I got to move my camera back. All right. It had Brian Thomas on 90% of my leagues. So congratulations, Andrew. I'm with you on that. I'm glad there was more than one of us. And I'm saying that all to present that I actually, as crazy as it might sound, I think 8 is too low. If people go back to this podcast that I did with Fitz just 2 weeks ago, we did our first round. I have Brian Thomas, and that was before the Liam Cohen Duval. That was before that. I had him in front of Nico Collins. Yeah, in front of Nico Collins, in front of Malik Nabers, because this was, I believe, Brian Thomas is that good with terrible quarterback play, and we can expect, if anything, better. And I don't even care if they add another weapon. If they drafted McMillan, surprisingly, I think Brian Thomas is that good. I'm glad Andrew was on this with me. I do think Malik Nabers is slightly too high. I know he did it with terrible quarterback play too, but let's be honest, we don't know. If it's Sanders, I think it actually could get worse for him. McConkey, I love, but that's another one where, like, as much as I had McConkey on a ton of teams, and he was another one that was close to my heart, that feels like peak McConkey. Like, I compare him to the best of Jacoby Myers, which is top 20, top 15, really good. But I don't see him getting to that next level, because we have to be honest about who McConkey is. As great as he is, he's just not that NFL tier 1 of number 1 wide receivers where he can put up even T. Higgins numbers. So, like, I just think that's capping him out just a little bit, and especially if they do add somebody. So Thomas too low, the other two pretty good. I'm okay with it. I think Nabers is slightly too high, but I'm okay with McConkey.
Nabers or Thomas for you, Andrew Erickson? Who do you have ranked above the other?
Oh, it's Brian Thomas. I'm just going to continue to just roll with the Brian Thomas and hope that it works out for another year in a row. So, I mean, it just comes down to, yes, I think that both guys are uber talents, but Brian Thomas was able to accumulate more yards last year on fewer targets and fewer receptions. Like, Nabers was catching 5-6 balls every single week. Brian Thomas wasn't necessarily doing that, but he was doing everything else when it comes to total yardage. So I like Brian Thomas Jr. more. He has the better quarterback, and I don't think it's even close. Trevor Lawrence, I mean, we've seen Trevor Lawrence have guys that are productive in his offenses. You bring Liam Cohen in. I mean, what Brian Thomas Jr. did with Mac Jones last 7 games, over 18.5 PPR points per game, 31% target share, 48% air yard share, 96 plus receiving yards per game with Mac Jones as his quarterback. So I love Brian Thomas Jr., and I think that he can be, I think that he should be a first round pick. I think that he should
I'm
go
sure
really
Andrew
ahead
knows
of
this.
These guys.
Minimum 20 points in the fantasy playoffs, the number 1 wide receiver in the fantasy playoffs in front of Jamar Chase and everybody else, Brian Thomas Jr.
So I think Thomas should go ahead of Nabers. I'm surprised that it's not that he's not consensus ahead of Nabers. I mean, we don't know who Nabers' quarterback is, and there's confidence that we should take him instead of Thomas.
I think it's maybe the logic of maybe Malik Nabers is quarterback proof from what you saw last year, and it could only get better in theory, and also because he plays in New York. Let's not pretend like it's not because of the media market of New York that elevates his value. Right. It's absolutely part of it. It always is. There's always a price you got to pay.
And he had the draft capital.
He did. And he was known as the better of the two when they were in college together too. So I think maybe you just can't shake that quite yet, but they are neck and neck right now. I mean, it's like when you go back and look at LSU and Chase and Jefferson, like they're neck and neck and they're still pretty good too. Those two guys, like you could certainly have that argument also. How about 95 over under catches for Ladd McConkey in 2025? Erickson over under 95.
I think it all depends on just if he's healthy or not, because that's really the only concern I have with Ladd McConkey. And even this year, that was his concern in college, where he got banged up every once in a while. And even this past year, he stayed healthy for most of it, but there were nicks and bruises here and there. He'd be on the injury report with the shoulder or something along those lines, and he would miss some time or miss reps in a game. I mean, if he's healthy, he's going to go over. But I mean, I'm always going to bet on guys not usually not.
Nice.
A lot of filibustering.
He's like you were trying to convince yourself. Jake Ciely, do you need time to convince yourself? 95 over under?
No, because I'm going back to Jacoby Myers. He's over.
He's over. Okay, there you have it, everybody. Let's move to Marvin Harrison Jr., the guy who was drafted above all these dudes, but unfortunately, it was a little disappointing season. His father, ironically, had almost the same rookie season, which I always think is fun. They 64 catches for senior, 63 for junior, 836 on the yardage for senior, 885 for junior, and then 8 touchdowns for each of them. However, one of them was about to play with Peyton Manning, and I don't know right now if Kyler Murray is going to have the same trajectory of his career. I doubt it. That being said, there's opportunity. Marvin Harrison has dropped all the way to wide receiver 25 right now. So, Andrew, when you're looking at Marvin Harrison, do you think this is a great time to buy low, or are you thinking maybe he is still more of a wide receiver 2 the way things are currently constructed in Arizona?
I think that he's a good buy. I think that we were just... The royal we was just over their skis. Marvin Harrison Jr.'s ADP last year was higher than Justin Jefferson's ADP in his second season. So after we saw Jefferson break out in year 1, we were drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. higher than Justin Jefferson. So I think it was just out of control of the expectations. And I think that's, now you're seeing a trickle down effect of that, where now you can't draft Marvin Harrison Jr. You have to discipline him, move him down the ranks significantly, when I think that he's going to improve in his second season in the NFL. I still think Kyler Murray is more than a capable quarterback. He was 5th in the NFL in end zone targets. What's the easiest path to a wide receiver 1 overall finish? I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's red zone targets. So they're looking for him. Kyler Murray is looking for him. They're scheming him up plays in the red zone. He still had 8 touchdowns. Like, that's really good for a rookie wide receiver. Right. So again, a lot of it has to do with, well, he wasn't as good as Nabers, as Brian Thomas, as McConkey, but in the retrospect of just a normal rookie wide receiver season, like, it's really not that bad. So I would be buying the dip on Marvin Harrison Jr. again. I didn't like drafting him at his cost, but now it's much more palatable where he's going to be going. So I like buying the dip.
I did, which made me sad, because unfortunately I had a lot of 10, 11, 12 picks. So that's the range where he was sitting there, and I was just going for it. Jake Ciely, maybe last year was an overreaction to the positive. Is this an overreaction to the negative side here?
Slightly. I think that unfortunately for like content wise, the ranks are really smart, shockingly enough. And, I look in front of him and say, yeah, I would take him over a few 2s, Metcalf, Addison, probably Adams, because his situation's volatile right now. But a lot of 2s, I would still take him. So maybe he creeps close to the top 20. But I think that's the right price, because what got baked into this entire conversation is it's not a Marvin Harrison problem. It's a Kyler Murray problem. And I talked about this in the article when I did the write-up, because I missed on Murray and I missed on Harrison as a result. And what it really came down to, and if we all saw it this year, is Kyler Murray, look, does height matter? Yes. Does it also not matter to a degree? Yes. It can be both. But the truth is, when it comes to height, when it comes to Drew Brees, Kyler Murray, all the quarterbacks like them, Bryce Young, as we're seeing, they have to work the pocket different than other quarterbacks. They have to throw through lanes versus over the top. And what that comes down to is knowing where your option is going to be. And as you saw, like Drew Brees, big slot, and Colston and Thomas, as you saw Bryce Young when Adam Thielen was back, there's just that connection. We all saw it there. Marvin Harrison doing jumping jacks on wide open. Murray just never made his progression back to him. And it's because they just don't have that comfort level. And I'm saying that to say it's going to get better. It's going to get to that level of, like we saw for years with Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett, that they didn't even need to see each other and just knew where they were going to be looking and knew where Lockett was going to be and throwing it downfield to him. They'll be that. There'll still be some rough spots, but I think it will be better to say I'm buying the dip too, but I'm not buying the dip if us and everybody starts talking about the dip and all of a sudden Marvin Harrison ends up back inside the top 15 and then all that dip would just went right out the window.
I think it will sneak back into the top 20. I don't think it'll sneak back into top 15.
I hope not.
Not with the rookie class coming out too. I just don't think that's going to happen. 2 more guys, Xavier Worthy, Rome Odunze. Interesting situations for them. You've seen Xavier Worthy in these playoff run, stretch run, really look good. Start to become, I think, more confident too. Great championship game for him in terms of stats. Rome Odunze, it doesn't have to have Keenan Allen around anymore next year. He's a free agent, and you get Ben Johnson coming in there, so there's a lot of room for optimism. So between these 2 guys right now, where we're looking at them in their rankings, would you prefer Worthy or Odunze in 2025, Jake?
Odunze by a mile. And because I'm assuming Keenan Allen's not coming back, but if Keenan Allen comes back, then this kind of gets thrown out the window with the dip as well. But Odunze comes down to a talent. I call him the bigger Garrett Wilson, which, I mean, think about Garrett Wilson with a little bit more size and the upside for that. And the biggest thing about Odunze is we go right back to what we talked about. And I say we as the collective we and everybody that did the same is back in August. Let's remember Jackson Smith and Jigba from the year before going to a team with two better wide receivers and just being the third option. Well, what just happened with Smith and Jigba? I think we can project that forward for Odunze, and maybe even if Keenan Allen is back, but now with Caleb Williams, now with the new offense with Ben Johnson, I want Odunze. I think Xavier Worthy is fine. Deshaun Jackson, and it's funny, as I said, Deshaun Jackson, even with the speed, and they're using him out of the backfield like you would with some Deshaun Jackson, but I think he's already kind of at his fair value. Maybe he has a little bit more upside, and we know Rashee Rice likely getting suspended. But I think where he is pretty fair. I just see a bigger room. Like Odunze honestly could finish 25 spots higher than he is right now.
Wow, that would be a huge jump. Erickson, Worthy or Odunze for you?
I think that with the ECR 36 and 30, I think those are both way too low for both guys, in my opinion. I think that they should both be inside like the top.
Where would you put Worthy? Top 20?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Inside the top 20, I would say. I mean,
Worthy's at 36, Odunze's at 37.5 point PPR in FantasyPros.
When we're looking,
let me do the question asking. I'm curious. No, I'm curious. Would you take Harrison or Worthy as of today? I'm curious because we're having this conversation.
I would take Worthy because he can be the number one receiver for the Chiefs next year. Why can't he be that guy? Rice is coming off a knee injury. Travis Kelce is 36. How old is we know Travis Kelce doesn't show up all the regular season, so I mean,
Travis Kelce might also retire at the end of this.
So Worthy has taken on. I mean, Worthy's doing what Rashee Rice did last year, and it's why Rashee Rice was such a good draft pick in his second season. But now Worthy's in that role. So will Rice get that role back when he comes? When is he coming back? He has a knee injury. He's going to miss all of the offseason most likely. So when they're installing the offense, who's going to be in that role? It's going to be Xavier Worthy, and then you have to worry about when he's going to get suspended or not. So, and when I'm looking back at them as prospects, Worthy's a first-round pick. Rice was a second-round pick. I thought Worthy had a better prospect profile than Rashee Rice. So if that's my head-to-head, I would take Worthy over Rice, and therefore I like Worthy a little bit more than Odunze as well. And to make a point here about comparing him to JSN, I think the other thing about that is it was also a Shane Waldron offense that he also. It's like it's just a copy and paste the JSN analysis in year 2. Odunze. Like it's like the exact same thing. Like post Shane Waldron offense. Yeah, I think both guys are way too low, but I would pick Worthy.
All right, there's a bunch of other rookies. We didn't talk about guys like A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Legette, maybe Jermaine Burton gets a bump with the Bengals next year with, vacated targets potentially from T. Higgins going away. But Erickson, when you're looking at this landscape of other rookie wide receivers last year, who might be looking at a better 2025 season?
I like Jalen Coker. Holy Cross product, undrafted free agent. I was looking back at some of our old shows we did last year, and Derek Brown was one of the highest guys on Jalen Coker back in June when this guy, an undrafted free agent from a college that's right where I grew up, right next to Worcester, Massachusetts, Holy Cross. So when I saw Jalen Coker kind of pop, I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And I'm looking at ECR and some of these early best ball rankings, and he's going behind Xavier Legette. Why? Jalen Coker was better as a rookie, and the only time we saw Legette actually get targets in this Panthers offense and have a higher target share was in games where Jalen Coker missed. The Panthers traded away Jonathan Mingo and Deontay Johnson. Obviously, those guys had their own issues, but clearly this coaching staff had shown some promise and hope with a guy like Jalen Coker. According to Yahoo's Matt Harmon, Coker finished second among all rookie wide receivers in yards per route run against man coverage. So, yes, Legette has the first-round draft capital. He's going to be on the team. He's going to be involved. But besides that, why should we draft him ahead of Jalen Coker, who was better as a rookie wide receiver and carved his way up the depth chart? He wasn't given opportunities. He had to earn all of his opportunities as a rookie undrafted free agent, and he delivered. And I think that when you look at Bryce Young's resurgence in the second half when he came back from his benching, you know what that coincided with? Jalen Coker in the lineup. Jalen Coker playing legitimate snaps for this offense. So I think that he is kind of being slept on a little bit as a year 2, level jumper or some other term, because I think that the draft capital is kind of holding him down. When you look at the on-field production that he did as a rookie, he was really impressive. And I know Debro will co-sign with me.
All right, Ciely, for you, who's the potential year 2 breakout of wide receivers from last year's rookie class?
So because it's going to sound like victory lapping, I'll admit that I was lower on Coker than I should have been. I was concerned about his downfield speed. So like, maybe make that clear. I'm not 100%. But if I could get up and kind of like run around the room and victory lap a little bit, it would
Nobody
be
wants
like,
to see that.
No. But it would be another Buccaneers player. I'm not a Buccaneers fan. Like it just happens. Like Jalen McMillan, I was pounding the table for Jalen McMillan. If you want to know the other football I was looking for was a McMillan football. I just couldn't find it because.
So the guy that Erickson was the highest on and I like the most, you just happen to have 2 signed footballs of. Sure, Jake.
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
The thing that I brought up in my rookie profile about him when I talk about Washington is that before the end of the season, when people were talking about the others in Polk and everything like that, was the one making the plays before the injury was McMillan. And the thing that I loved about him, and you saw it in the playoff game, is that he just knows how to find space, especially when things are breaking down. He just knows how to exploit zone. He knows where to be. And I thought that going into a situation where he ended up was like, hey, learn from Chris Godwin and be new Chris Godwin.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's extremely lofty. But the reason I had him in a lot of spots and kept telling people to hold on to him was like, if something happened, and I was thinking something was going to happen to Mike Evans at this point of his career, not expecting to be Chris Godwin. But as we saw at the end of the season, from week 11 until the end of the season, especially from weeks 14 on, we're talking about top 40. And then from week 14 on, you're talking about top 25 production. And why is that going to change? If everybody wants Baker Mayfield to continue in this offense, everybody wants Mike Evans to go one more year and Bucky Irving, all that. Why is Jalen McMillan not part of the conversation? If Chris Godwin re-signs, obviously this throws a wrench into the entire plan, but I don't think the Buccaneers need to re-sign Godwin because they have slightly lesser Godwin and McMillan. I would put him in the 30s right now, and he's not even close to that.
He's at 43 right now. I think it's absurd. I loved him in camp too. He was one of my like sleeper picks. You go back and watch every draft show we did last August. I was taking Jalen McMillan with like my last 2 picks, and I had to cut him everywhere because unfortunately the first 6 weeks, well, fortunately for Evans and Godwin, everybody was healthy and everybody looked great. So, and McMillan wasn't healthy, and things.
You know who we were all fighting for? You, me, and there was one other person at Flex that all were fighting for Jalen McMillan. It was Jamie Eisenberg. I think know. I think the 3 of us collectively have a pretty good mind put together.
I think so, and typically we're all in on the same players. I would put Ronis in that mix as well. Yeah, it's why I hate being. I had to draft last year right next to Ronis, so But one of us made the playoffs. Who was it? This guy wasn't me. But it wasn't you.
Hey, Debro went freaking, what was it, 16-2 and then got one and done in the playoffs? It happens.
Debro was 26-2 and then
that's
lost
what it was,
after the bye. But I told him he should never go to another draft live again. You should always draft absentee because it's the best draft you've ever done.
I forgot. Yeah,
that's right. We had little Debro. We had this guy right here. He had to go draft for Derek Brown in his place. He sat there at the table and made all the little picks at the laptop. We always keep little Derek around for good times. But McMillan also had a nose for the end zone too, which is, again, something that matters, especially in fantasy. You have a guy, especially if you can keep Mike Evans healthy on the field, that's going to free up Jalen McMillan, and I'm very high on him. They're going to take that money and spend it elsewhere. I think with
McMillan too, to the point that I think Jake brought up, if he hadn't gotten hurt right after Mike Evans and Chris Godwin got hurt, his numbers would have been even better.
Profile would have been bigger.
Like it would have been even better just based on once he got healthy, that's when he started to produce. But that would have happened a month earlier had he also not gotten hurt at the same time as Evans and Godwin, and we would have never seen the Cade Otton renaissance for that like 4-week period where he was unstoppable.
All right, we still got some quarterbacks and tight ends to speak about. Speaking of tight ends, you can also get some free stuff, a signed TJ Hockenson Vikings helmet for free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com. All you need to do is head to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either download the Fantasy Pros My Playbook app, leave a review for the podcast, or follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more entries you receive, and we'll be announcing the winner right here on the podcast. So if you're watching on the YouTube, subscribe and turn on those notifications, ring that bell till it goes ding, so you can be alerted every time a new episode is up, and you can claim your prize of the TJ Hockenson Vikings helmet giveaway. Let's talk quarterback. Jayden Daniels, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. Right now, he is the QB3 in ECR. So I guess here's the big question, Jake. Obviously, people are very excited about Jayden Daniels. Is he automatically just slam dunk top 5 here? Or do you think now, because of all the media attention, the playoff run and everything, where maybe we're putting expectations that are too high on him, similarly to what happened with CJ Stroud, maybe not quite as much because Stroud wasn't as much of a rusher as Daniels. So I get the Daniels love even more, but there is a lesson to be learned that sometimes that second year, there's adjustments the league makes to you. What do you think?
Yeah, and sometimes those adjustments go nowhere, as we saw with other quarterbacks. Like, let's just talk runners. Michael Vick and Robert Griffin, outside of injuries, where were their fall off? So I think that, I know you weren't saying that. I already shook my head when you said the CJ Stroud thing, because I'm getting tired of it already. Like, the Commanders game ended, and within 5 minutes on Twitter it was like, let's not forget sophomore slumps are real. Like, shut up. They're not all the same. The thing about Jayden Daniels is, we had Ben Standig on a couple times on the show, and he was saying the difference of him versus a lot of other rookies he's just seen in general, not even just the quarterback position, is the calm he has. Like, good game, he's happy, he's calm, everything's going right. Things are going wrong, terrible game, interceptions. He's calm, he's happy, he's just right. He's just got this presence, and he said it carried throughout the team, a rookie presence that was carrying throughout the team of like this just calm and just understanding that things go either way, and let's just go out there and do our best. And to see that poise from a rookie quarterback, I think just takes it one step further. We were already talking about how can you love Brian Thomas and Malik Nabers and forget about the quarterback that made that happen. So the rushing upside you bring up, I will say right now, top 3 deserved. If that second wide receiver gets, like, the solution is, hell, if it's T. Higgins, there's one quarterback I want in front of Jayden Daniels, and it's Lamar Jackson, end of list. If it's even lesser T. Higgins, like maybe they draft somebody, maybe they bring somebody in who's a decent 2 alongside of him just to answer that question. I brought up yesterday on SiriusXM, I brought Hollywood Brown. Like, he's a free agent. Like, get that deep ball that he was trying for Noah Brown and Diami. I guess he needs another wide receiver named Brown. That's what it is. He has to go from Noah Brown to Diami Brown to Marquise Brown. But anyway, point being, just get a solution there. And I think that solves any potential issue for a drop-off, because the biggest answer is not, or question for me, the answer not being is Jayden Daniels, is who's his number 2? Because they need somebody after Terry McLaurin.
Agreed. And Ertz, you can't count on him being back either. That's going to be interesting to see what they give him next year. But they've got cap space, Erickson. So it's pretty obvious that they're going to be aggressive, and certainly the new ownership is going to be supportive.
Yeah, well, a lot of their cap space, I'm not sure because a lot of their guys, they need to re-sign. Like, all of their receivers aside Terry McLaurin are free agents. So how will they approach it? Were they going to bring back guys like Diami Brown, Noah Brown, because, hey, we had some success with them? Or are they going to look for outside alternatives to improve the roster? I think we'll get a mixture of both. I think that the Commanders have an advantage now where, hey, players want to come to Washington to play with Jayden Daniels now. Like, when has that ever been the conversation where, yeah, I want to go to Washington to play football? That has not been the case for a very, very long time. So if you're T. Higgins, right, man, I could probably make more money for the Patriots, but I could go to the NFC, not have to deal with going through Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, and I just have to beat one NFC team with Jayden Daniels as my quarterback. Like, that sounds pretty good. So I think that they're going to bolster the roster here, improve it. And I know that the Texans did that too. It didn't work out, but it goes back to the mobility thing. Like, even if he struggles as a passer for a month or so, well, he's got the running to fall back on. And it seems like Cliff Kingsbury is going to be coming back too. So that consistency with the offensive play caller in year 2. I mean, Jayden Daniels, again, he's an experienced quarterback because he played so much time in college. So the moment's never too big for him. So yeah, I think he's locked and loaded, top 5, top 3.
I will be betting him to win MVP next year. I've already said it. I'm going out there, and I'm sure the first number I get is going to be a very good one, because I'm sure it's going to be the usual suspects at the top of that list, and then Jayden Daniels maybe somewhere on the 5th or 6th guy. That's going to be a nice number. Lock it in right away. Let's talk Superflex. Bo Nix, QB 13 in the rankings. Caleb Williams, QB 15. Drake May, QB 20. Michael Penix Jr., QB 24. Erickson, who's the best return on investment in Superflex of those guys?
It's Drake May. It's not even close, in my opinion. I think Drake May is going to just be awesome in 2025. I'm super excited for him. What he flashed as a rookie in borderline one of the worst offensive environments you could ask for a quarterback. And let alone a rookie quarterback at like 22 years old. I'm just so excited. It's fun because for me, I've never been able to draft the Patriots quarterback in fantasy football because Tom Brady was always super expensive. I was like, I'm not going to draft a pocket passer in the 5th round with all my Boston friends where he's going so high in drafts. But Drake May as a late round quarterback, he's a mobile rushing quarterback with a rocket arm. I think they're going to improve the offensive line, improve the wide receivers around him. Last year, and this is like a fun stat, last year, Drake May was 5th in terms of quarterback scramble efficiency. The 4 guys in front of him were the 4 quarterbacks on the teams that represented in the AFC and NFC championship game. Now, that's just one stat nugget, but it's showing you what he's capable of doing with his legs. and any step he takes as a passer. He had 1 passing touchdown 8 consecutive games. The only other rookie quarterback to do that was Justin Herbert his rookie year. He threw 1 passing touchdown every single game that he started and played in full as a rookie quarterback on the 2024 New England Patriots offense. I was just blown away with what Drake May did as a rookie, given the circumstance, and I think that he's going to be a monster fantasy producer in year 2. So for me, it's Drake May over all these guys.
Jake Ciely, same question to you. Who's the best ROI in Superflex?
So I think the best return on investment is Penix because he's 24, but that's not my answer. Like, I mean, if we're just going by pure where they rank, I don't think Penix is going to be 24 by the time we get to July and August. And that's really what it comes down to there. I think a lot of it's like, oh, what's it going to be? You saw how much you used Drake London down the stretch. May, I'm okay with, but I think the biggest answer there that we found out was that the Patriots homerism. No, just kidding. Like, Michael Florio trying to get Josh Allen the MVP. You guys,
Drake May is mobile too. That's the other thing about Drake May. That if you give him some actual weapons and his mobility, that is something from the fantasy perspective. That is a pretty good value at 20.
Which I'm glad you brought up because I'm not going to disagree too much. I actually said Drake May is my comparison in the NFL was better Sam Howell. Like he's mistake almost free Sam Howell. No,
he doesn't take sacks. Yeah, he gets yards.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. He doesn't throw any interceptions. He doesn't take sacks, but he could throw for over 4,000 yards. He could throw for 30 touchdowns. He will be aggressive at times. My biggest problem is who are the weapons for the Patriots? I don't even buy into I obviously love my rookies as much as anybody. I still don't even buy to the rookies that they have. And I look at who's got the best scenario now with a coach who knows how to use them, and it's Caleb Williams. You said running. People, I think, overlooked the fact he ran for almost 500 yards and didn't find the end zone once because it just wasn't the answer at that time. Offensive line, a huge question. But we've seen what Ben Johnson did with Jared Goff. We've seen what Ben Johnson's done with that offense. And you're talking about Caleb Williams gets to come into year 2 of his career, assuming the Bears make some offensive line improvements. But you already have the weapons. The weapons are around him. You already have the talent. And we already saw when they made that switch off Waldron, that brief stretch where they kind of hammered into what the Commanders did with Daniels to start this year, which Kingsbury was very smart at doing, was like, look, you take the easy, short, intermediate throws. If they're not there, run. If they're not there, run. Caleb Williams did that for about 2 games, and it started to click. And then he reverted back when that shift changed and Thomas Brown got the promotion and all that type of stuff. I think Caleb Williams still has top 10 upside, and I think people are way too off of him just because of 1 year of misery.
Yeah, look, those 68 sacks, some are definitely on the offensive line. A lot of them are on Caleb Williams. I mean, when you watch the tape,
he did the same thing at USC. He's like, let me run
around.
But
you can't get away with that stuff. This is the NFL. This is the NFL. You can't get away with that stuff anymore.
Head.
You know, you're not gonna be able to get away with that. You have to evolve, and you have to learn how to, like you said, move the ball forward, matriculate the ball down the field. Tight end, it's Brock Bowers. End of story in 2024. That's who it was. The only question is, Jake, is Brock Bowers a first round pick? Yes or no?
You saw my answer 2 weeks ago on this very network. No, he's not a second rounder for me either. No, I am never going to take a tight end there because they have to have the Travis Kelce, not seasons overall. They have to have the Travis Kelce elite seasons of 17 points per game, which go back and look. What did Travis Kelce do to get there? 1,300 yards and double-digit touchdowns. You're telling me Brock Bowers is going to do that with the Raiders? Stop.
Well, no. Jake Ciely will have 0 shares of Brock Bowers in 2025 based on the 3rd round grade he's going to give him. Andrew Erickson, how far are you willing overall to draft Brock Bowers?
I agree with Jake. You know, in the 2nd round, top of round 3, because you just have to be so good. And can Aiden O'Connell or insert Raiders rookie quarterback here really get Brock? Because what was Brock Bowers missing his rookie year? The receptions were there, yards were there, 4 touchdowns, right? Like that's the thing that isn't going to be able to put him over the top. And it goes back to also the tight end position overall. And when you invest a high draft pick into a tight end, you're taking on a lot more risk because not only are you, hey, I need this player to hit, you're then taking away your waiver wire options. If you drop Brock Bowers in the 1st, 2nd round, you're not going to the waiver wire at any point. Brock Bowers could suck for 6 weeks in a row and you're like, I'm going with Brock Bowers this week. So your alternative is like, if you draft Brock Bowers, that means you don't get the chance to get Jonnu Smith. Right? And Jonnu Smith is a top 5 tight end. So like that's something that I'm always trying to keep in mind when it comes to if you invest in that tight end early on, well, you're kind of saying bye-bye to the waiver wire. Like that no longer is an option. And what do we see every single year without fail? Someone on the waiver wire at tight end pops. and they end up being a startable piece down the line. So it's a 2v2. Would you rather have Brock Bowers and a receiver that you get off the waiver wire? Or would you rather have insert Brian Thomas Jr. and the tight end that I pick up off the waiver wire that turns into Jonnu Smith? And I think I prefer the latter. So I agree with Jake. I think unless it's top of round 3, end of round 2, it's probably going to be a no for me on Brock Bowers as well.
And he wasn't even number 1 in points per game.
When you're looking at the rest of the guys from last year, 2024 tight end, obviously is not too much to see. Is a Jatavian Sanders interesting to you guys next year, or a Ben Sinnott maybe, if Zach Ertz is gone from Washington or decides to hang him up?
I love the Sanders call, mostly because I don't think people realize his numbers are eerily similar to Trey McBride's rookie season. And what I like about Sanders, obviously we'll have to see what the Panthers do if they bring in a significant either replacement for Thielen or something like that. This kind of alludes, like, I don't think Bryce Young is supporting 3 weapons. But if Sanders is in play to be the 2, I think he's the interesting one. Theo Johnson, I want to know who the quarterback is. That's really what it comes down to.
All right. And about for you, Erickson, anybody there?
I think I was a year or 2 early on the Panthers. I'm really excited about what Bryce Young can do. So I like Sanders a ton. We saw Dave Canales when Sanders was healthy. Before he had this really scary concussion, he was really starting to pick up steam in this offense. And then he obviously missed a lot of games. But he had snap shares surpass 85% in 2 games, week 6 and 7. So he had a full-time role in this offense. And you know who's free agents? Tommy Tremble, free agent. Ian Thomas, free agent. So really, going into the season, Sanders could take on a full-time role at tight end, which is half the battle when it comes to these tight ends. Like, who's on the field the most? And like, that's halfway to get to the points that you need. So especially if we see Bryce Young take another step and Dave Canales is another year in the system. Something I noticed about with Bryce Young was they threw the ball a ton in the red zone, but a lot of it didn't result in passing touchdowns. If you get some touchdown regression, that's going to benefit the tight end like Sanders. So I like Sanders a lot. And then I kind of like Cade Stover too. Just please, enough of Dalton Schultz, please. I just anything but Dalton. Like, he has the perfect run out. All the receivers get hurt for the Texans. Doesn't matter. He does absolutely nothing the entire year. So give me some Cade Stover, Ohio State connection with CJ Stroud.
So there you have it, everybody. That's a look at last year's rookie class and what it might mean in 2025 for their value. If you want to see the ranks, go to FantasyPros.com. That's the place to see it. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel and ring the bell till it goes ding for notifications so you never miss a piece of content here on Fantasy Pros. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Jake Ciely and Andrew Erickson, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.